In painting outdoors, the first consideration should be, does the view present a worthy motive? Is there quality that exhilarates and lifts the mind beyond mere making of a picture? Edgar Payne. This is a follow-up demo and tutorial on my video titled First Steps Toward a Successful Composition, Learn from Isaac Levitan. If you watched that tutorial, this one will make better sense. In the previous day, I already created a study of a similar view, but I chose a new location for this painting. As usual, I use my Raphael oil-primed linen panel, and I prep it with walnut oil, vermilion, and cadmium yellow. This thin wash of color sets the tone of the painting and moistens the canvas. The success of the drawing and the following painting lies in thinking like a sculptor. Think of the canvas as a block and the first lines as virtual cutting off sections of that block. Think of compositional balance. What are the best proportions of the land masses to the sky? If this is a lighter sky mass, and this is the darker land mass, what will my painting be about? The beauty of the land, the life-giving, life-saving river, the harsh but beautiful desert floor with its fascinating geology. Thus, the various sections of the landmass have to be divided into proportionally balanced stripes. The stripes get narrower as they recede away toward the horizon. None of the stripes are of the same size. This is one of the keys to a good design. The sizes of the individual stripes and the sum of two narrower adjacent stripes are also of different sizes. These size variations already begin to build interest in the design and composition. These lines also represent the different sections of our virtual block from which to carve the more precise shapes of the sky and land masses. While you see what I am drawing on my canvas, this is what is going on in my head, my abstract thinking and envisioning process that starts with two stripes representing sky and land. Another stripe represents distant mountains, mid-ground desert floor, the river, the foreground desert floor. Then I go into more details with dark cool accent in the sky, dark accent in the foreground, and light warm accents in the sky. I trim my stripes into basic geometric elements that abstractly represent the features of the land and sky. I arrange them in a balanced way and create rhythmic patterns which later will be filled with the more detailed landscape features. My stripes get extended and trimmed, cut and interrupted by a nearby stripe's color value. Based on this abstract thinking, I draw over the lines that I set as the boundaries of my stripes. Now, the stripes get carved into individual shapes. Smaller lines indicating slopes interrupt the predictable linear configuration. The shorter lines begin to represent the eroded desert floor in the middle and foreground, the river winding through it, the distant mountain ranges, and the clouds in the sky. Think of it as chopping away smaller and finer chips of rock from the original block. The closer to the needed shape you get, the smaller the pieces you remove. Keep in mind that I'm designing an artwork, not copying the view in front of me. Learning from nature and copying what it offers in drawing and painting constructively and representationally is important for beginning art students. But this is the design and composition stage, where your drawing and painting skills are not an option, but a prerequisite. The actual view is the starting point. It is an inspiration, an idea, a concept, an experience. What you're seeing on location is only a fraction of your experience. All your senses, physical and emotional, metaphysical and spiritual, felt with both body and mind, are telling you more than you merely see with your eyes. Thus, as a creator of an artwork, I strive to convey what I sense on location while viewing this area. The process of conveying what you sense starts with choosing the view, designing it abstractly, and choosing shapes such as sharp-edged, angular, or rounded and soft. Sharp, angular shapes and strong contrasts between dark and light values, as well as louder colors, can be used to represent harshness and discomfort. The rounded shapes, soft transitions between values, and muted colors can be used to convey pleasant feelings. Use of conflicting shapes, colors, and values will send a conflicting message. Choose wisely. The design continues with color value choices in the painting process. I start with the sky, where I'm working with my lightest values and soft transitions. Bits of sky appear here and there between veil-like clouds, lending me more design elements. I'm also guided by my previous day's study for color value choices, so I know where I'm going while paying attention to the uniqueness of this particular day. I'm getting away from the abstract, inching closer to the precise, but not fully into detail. At this point, I'm more concerned with hitting the right values and quality of edges, trusting in my palette in keeping color choices on the brighter side. Now is the time to focus on expressing the spirit of the place, its mood, its interaction with you, the artist, and its potential effects on the viewer. Be wise with your color value choices. In this work, I aim to capture the spirit of the desert environment on a chilly winter day. The river brings water to the desert, which helps little, as the only distinct greenery runs along its banks. The rest of the vegetation is sparse and struggles to stay green despite the recent rain. So even in the cooler, wetter season, the desert stays the desert. Captivating, mysterious, abiding, vast, and dry. The river is persistent, calm, obedient, respectful, and refreshing. The sky is uncertain, changing between warm softness and cool haziness. At times it lets in the sunshine, then it takes it away. And that's how I will use my brushwork and color. The distant mountains, with their sharp pinnacles and angular ridges, tell a geologically violent story from long ago. Thus, I choose to emphasize their size and amplify the aerial perspective. By doing so, I tell the viewer that they are significant to the desert, but rather obscure. And my sketchy brushwork and light and hazy color values reflect not only their distance from me, but the back-in-time distance and the sketchy knowledge of their creation. Lighter values and cooler colors for the sky and distant mountains is not just the aerial perspective effect, but design elements. Getting their color values to be representative of the landscape, keeping them in harmony with other colors, is important. As I proceed to work on the midground, I focus on what defines it. My careful observation of geology tells me that the tops of many hills are of darker, harder rock composition, below which are lighter color sediments of rock particles as small as sand and as large as a basketball. In fact, I was painting this work while standing on one of those dark rock tops, and most of my hikes to locations were over the lighter rock sediments. The dark rock was in various shades of brown, some redder, some leaning toward purple. The lighter sediments were made of colorful rocks as well, but most of them were all broken up pieces with bleached by the sun sides up. They reflected light readily like beach sand. That helped me choose the color. The desert floor around these darker tops was lighter and warmer, but the veil-like clouds kept casting cooler light, and the sunshine struggled. In my composition, These darker geologic rock features are additional design elements that break up the repetitive desert floor and provide some interest where there is otherwise little contrast between light and shadows. Getting their color value right is very important. Thus, the midground gets warmer colors, with the warmest reserved for the foreground. In the foreground, the same desert floor, only with sharper contrasts between color values, is a given. The desert was not shouting, "Look at me!" but it wasn't whispering either. So I focused on not overdoing the colors and contrasts, yet not softening them too much. When I got to the river, I got to it literally and painterly. On previous occasions, I went swimming in it despite the chilly in the 50s temperatures. I got to know it by seeing, tasting, smelling, feeling it with my body, and trusting myself to it. I scared some water birds, such as mallards and coots, that didn't expect to see me. I make a point of knowing my subject matter as much as I can. Coming to an area famous for great views and just painting is not like me. The river's color values were very obviously influenced by what was going on in the sky. But overall, the value was darker, as if you take all the values in the sky and average them out. This is a good starting point, which later allows to fine-tune the color value of the water to make the best visual effect and, if needed, impact. As I work on the color values of the foreground, the whole painting begins to make sense outside of my mind. I took my first step toward creating it some time ago, when I saw the view and found it worthy of note. Then, as I worked on the study as a concept in the practice run, realizing that I must come back to this spot and recreate this view in this particular way. And finally, when I came to the spot, set up, and put my first lines on the canvas, the painting was basically finished in my mind. So this demo is the process of materializing what I have designed. To my students, I always tell not to work too much on one part of the painting. Never finish one area and ignore the other. Covering the canvas with color values as fast as possible allows you to fine-tune all parts of the work to each other, so nothing is out of tune. And in this demo, you see me starting to work more on details in the sky and the midground, without adding all the color values to the foreground. That is because in my mind, the painting is basically finished. While you see untouched canvas, I see the very color values I will end up painting. In a way, I'm able to ignore the very bottom of the canvas and not let it throw me off course. I'm not breaking any rules. My artistic mind is merely way ahead. This comes with experience, which is why sometimes watching a master artist do a demo may seem like an artist is breaking rules or not following them. A demonstration of how an artist creates is not the same as a lesson or a tutorial. You can learn a lot from seeing a demo, but some parts can leave you confused. Don't make a mistake of thinking that if a well-known artist has a certain approach to painting, then you, an art student, should or could do it the same way too. You might be one of a few artistic geniuses who grasp all art principles intuitively with little practice. But most art students benefit from explanations of rules and a step-by-step approach. And someday, you too will jump over steps and zoom to the top, but you will not be breaking those steps. And so there is no breaking rules in painting without consequences. A good tutorial should explain rules, show examples, and make everything as clear as possible. As I move to work on the foreground, I note how that intermittent sunshine reveals and hides contrasts where I need them most in the foreground. My goal is to convincingly capture that transitory state. This particular atmospheric condition is what affects our mood in a certain way. I pay close attention to how it looks at the same time as how it makes me feel inside. I note a connection between this particular internal feedback, my senses, to the physical aspects of the landscape, and then decide on what color values to emphasize or de-emphasize. This is one of the reasons why I don't paint from photos and don't strive to paint photorealistically. Photography done right is one art discipline. Painting done right is another art discipline. The two overlap in some artistic rules like composition, color theory, and effects of values. But they are different mediums. If an artist chooses to combine them, it has to be done right. Otherwise, you'll end up with neither a good work of photography nor a good painting. Back to the desert floor. How strange it is. The foreground dark rock tops help a lot with the feeling of distance. They give me my darkest values so that the midground dark hilltops would recede and visually read as more distant. If I take the color values out of the context of the painting, they reveal the difference in contrasts. The dark and light values are much closer together in the midground compared to that of the foreground. The hues and warm to cool color balance in the foreground is stronger compared to the midground. But are those great differences or not? They are mild differences, and that is what I wanted to achieve, to bring to the eyes of the viewer the uncertain effect of the changing light and atmosphere. I already emphasized the foreground colors a bit more than an average observed appearance of them. Making them any warmer or pushing them toward a brighter hue will suggest a sunnier, warmer day. And that is not what my painting is about. In addition, there are physical aspects that have to be maintained. The foreground in the painting is at a distance from me. There is less atmosphere between me and the foreground desert floor compared to the distance between me and the midground, but the foreground is not right in front of me. It is between half a mile and mile and half away. Just for this reason alone, contrasts have to be softer, even on a clear day. Today it is hazy with higher humidity and veiled sunshine. My color value choices reflect the amount of atmospheric particles in the air between me and all points of the landscape in front of me. As I'm nearing the end of my painting process, I add fine little details such as sparse greenery. Observing shrubs up close, I noticed how fine and miniature are their leaves, how their branches bend readily with the wind, how their character combines strength with tenderness. They are mysterious survivors who have no illusions nor complaints about their harsh environment. I make a mental note of that for my future artwork. I don't find this often. These shrubs are a welcome addition to the design. Their color value can't be too strong. It is barely green and has that irregular sprinkled look. Some shrubs cluster closer together, some are far apart. But among their erratic spacing, I notice a kind of pattern. The slopes that face north, washes and ravines, host a bit more shrubs, obviously due to a slightly higher retention of water. But how did the harder, more solid rock form on top of the lighter, broken up rock sediments that the water cuts right through it? It is a geologic mystery to me. What was formed first, the volcanic deposits or the eroded, broken up sediments? So far, I have no answer. However they were formed, they are out of the ordinary. They give the desert its character, and that catches my attention. The river seems somewhat disconnected from the desert floor. Thus, I didn't soften the edges of its shores against the water. The desert soil is not retaining much water. In another environment, there would be more of a connection between the water and shoreline via greenery and lush vegetation. Here, it is hardly noticeable. The river is a huge help to people and animals, but not so for most of the plants. And thus, I'm letting the desert floor float on the water with definite edges around it. It is neither good nor bad, neither sad nor happy. This is the nature and the spirit of the desert, hospitable to some, unwelcoming to others. Some fall in love with the desert, treat it with due respect, and it rewards them. Some can't tolerate it, fight with it, and in turn, it punishes them. With this work, I got one step closer to knowing and appreciating the mysterious desert. While chilly wind lashed at my face and the intermittent sunshine strained my eyes, my mind was experiencing a total serenity during the hours of painting. When hiking to and from this location with nearly 20 pounds of gear may have been a physical strain on my body, my mind perceived that as the only way to do this right. Thus, it was a joy. If you would like to know how I learned drawing and painting, take a look at the curriculum books I saved from my art college days. On these pages of the academic drawing curriculum, the majority of illustrations are the works of young art students who took this course back in the 1950s. This method is designed for children to start as young as 10 years old and completing their training by 18. Being fully prepared to enter an art academy. The academic painting and composition courses follow the same pattern. I teach the 19th century Russian academic drawing and painting method using the curriculum that was designed specifically for middle and high school students. It is not my method, style, preference, or opinion. It is not something I discovered. I don't reveal secrets, tricks, or tips. It is a centuries-old, time-proven method developed by the masters, built on undisputed art principles. It is a tradition, a way of thinking about the world, a way of seeing it and representing it in any given medium. Slowing down, taking your time, paying attention, thinking, asking questions, and finding answers takes time. This is the Art Academy's way of learning. Taught this way, a student can pick up any medium, including digital, be creative, and start producing quality artwork. And thus, I invite you to be part of the art revival, not the decline. I'm Elena Roche. Thank you for watching. Until next time.